So all right, so recording पनि भइरहेको छ. So सबैजनालाई नमस्ते. हाम्रो 12th वेब सिरिज वेबिनार नेपाल मेन्टल हेल्थ रिसर्च सिरिजमा मेरो नाम चाहिँ सवार्द राई. लास्ट मन्थ चाहिँ म एज अ स्पिकर आएको थिएँ भने चाहिँ यो पालि चाहिँ म एज अ फेसिलिटेटर आइरहेको छु. कहिलेकाहीँ चाहिँ हाम्रो सधैँको साथी रितिकाको चाहिँ समय नमिल्दाखेरि चाहिँ म चाहिँ उहाँलाई कभर गरिदिन्छु र यो मन्थ पनि मैले चाहिँ रितिकालाई चाहिँ कभर गरिरहेको छु. कतिजनाले चाहिँ मलाई चिनिसक्नु भएको छ. मैले अघि पनि मेरो नाम भने, मेरो नाम सवार्द राई. म चाहिँ जर्ज वासिङटन युनिभर्सिटीमा एज अ रिसर्च साइन्टिस्ट काम गर्छु. अनि नेपालमा चाहिँ ग्लोबल मेन्टल हेल्थमा काम गरेको चाहिँ लगभग 1 दशक जस्तो भइसक्यो. आज चाहिँ हाम्रो presentation, हाम्रो webinarको टाइटल चाहिँ Translation, Adaptation and Validation of Mental Health Tools in Nepal, Lesson Learned भन्ने छ. अनि आज चाहिँ हामीलाई त्रिभुवन युनिभर्सिटी इन्स्टिट्युट अफ मेडिसिन डिपार्टमेन्ट अफ साइकियाट्री को डाक्टर प्रतीक्षा तुलाचन हुनुहुन्छ. सो वी आर भेरी प्रिभिलेज टु हेभ हियर डाक्टर तुलाचन. उहाँले चाहिँ आफ्नो काम ट्रान्सकल्चरल ट्रान्सलेसन टुल्सहरूको चाहिँ उहाँको आफ्नो कामको बारेमा चाहिँ उहाँ कुरा गर्नुहुन्छ. सो वी आर भेरी एक्साइटेड टु हियर अबाउट हर. म उहाँलाई सर्टली इन्ट्रोड्युस गर्छु, तर त्योभन्दा अगाडि चाहिँ वेबिनारको बारेमा चाहिँ छोटो मिठो केही कुराहरू चाहिँ गर्न चाहन्छु. मलाई लाग्छ धेरैजना चाहिँ पहिला पनि वेबिनारमा आइसक्नु भएको छ, तर जस्ट टु गिभ यु एन ओभरभ्यू, यो वेबिनार चाहिँ हामी चाहिँ एभ्री मन्थ रन गर्छौँ, एभ्री मन्थको 3rd वेडनेसडेको लागि. अनि यो वेबिनार चाहिँ हामी टिपिओ नेपाल र जर्ज वासिङटन युनिभर्सिटीको सहकार्यमा चाहिँ हामी चाहिँ यो सञ्चालन गर्छौँ. अनि हाम्रो मेन फोकस चाहिँ अर्ली करियर रिसर्चर्सहरूको लागि हो. सो हामीले चाहिँ के गर्छौँ भन्दाले चाहिँ विभिन्न स्पिकर्सहरू ल्याउँछौँ जसले चाहिँ मेन्टल हेल्थ अनि बिहेभियर हेल्थ रिसर्च सम्बन्धी चाहिँ विभिन्न टपिकहरूमा चाहिँ आफ्नो काम, आफ्नो पेपर्सहरू चाहिँ प्रस्तुत गर्नुहुनेछ. सो इट्स भेरी ओपन. यदि कसैलाई प्रेजेन्ट गर्नु मन छ अथवा कसैलाई चाहिँ यो टपिकको बारेमा चाहिँ प्रेजेन्ट गर्नु पाए हुन्थ्यो अनि यो टपिक प्रेजेन्ट गर्नुको लागि चाहिँ यो मान्छे चाहिँ राम्रो छ अथवा सी अर ही सेम्स सुटेबल फर दिस जब भनेर चाहिँ प्लिज हामीलाई सजेस्ट गर्नु होला. हाम्रो बिनिताजीले फिडब्याक फर्म पनि राख्नु भएको छ र साथसाथै हाम्रो इमेल एड्रेसहरू पनि छ, त्यसमा चाहिँ हामीले कन्ट्याक्ट गरेर चाहिँ गर्न सक्नुहुन्छ. यदि तपाईँहरू चाहिँ नेपाल मेन्टल हेल्थ नेपाल मेन्टल हेल्थ रिसर्च सिरिजमा चाहिँ तपाईँ सब्सक्राइब पनि गर्नुभयो भने चाहिँ हामी चाहिँ इमेलको थ्रुबाट पनि हामी यो सबै डिटेल्सहरू चाहिँ पठाउँछौँ, के भइरहेको छ, कस्तो भइरहेको छ भन्ने कुराहरू. र साथसाथै हाम्रो सोसियल मिडिया पेज ट्विटर, फेसबुक, इन्स्टाग्रामबाट पनि हामीले यो अपडेट्सहरू चाहिँ दिइरहेको हुन्छौँ. सो प्लिज हाम्रो नेटवर्कमा चाहिँ सब्सक्राइब गरिदिनु होला. अनि कपल अफ हाउसकिपिङ थिङ मैले अघि पनि भनिहालेँ. सर्वप्रथम चाहिँ हामीले यो वेबिनार रेकर्ड गर्छौँ अनि त्यसपछि सबै पार्टिसिपेन्टहरूलाई चाहिँ पछि एज अ रेफरेन्स चाहिँ हामीले चाहिँ सेयर गर्छौँ र साथसाथै एभ्री स्पिकरहरूको स्लाइड्स पनि रेफरेन्सको लागि चाहिँ हामी सेयर गर्छौँ. यो कुरा चाहिँ हामीले हाम्रो युट्युब, हाम्रो फेसबुक, हाम्रो ट्विटरमा पनि सेयर गर्छौँ. सो तपाईँले त्यहाँबाट पनि लिन सक्नुहुन्छ. अनि यो वेबिनार चाहिँ 1 घन्टा लामो हुन्छ. सो सर्वप्रथम चाहिँ हाम्रो स्पिकर आजको लागि चाहिँ डाक्टर प्रतीक्षा चाहिँ फर्स्ट जानुहुन्छ र उहाँसँग चाहिँ 15 मिनट्स हुनुहुन्छ आफ्नो प्रेजेन्टेसन गर्नुको लागि. र त्यसपछि चाहिँ हामी क्वेसन एन्ड एन्सर राउन्डमा जान्छौँ. र क्वेसन एन्ड एन्सर राउन्डमा चाहिँ तपाईँहरूले चाहिँ च्याटमा पनि गर्न सक्नुहुन्छ अथवा हजुरले आफ्नो माइक अनम्युट गरेर चाहिँ मजाले क्वेसन्सहरू पनि सोध्नुहुन्छ. सो हामी चाहिँ हाम्रो समयभित्रमा जति सक्दो धेरै क्वेसनहरू चाहिँ हामी एड्रेस गर्न कोसिस गर्छौँ. तर यदि केही भएर हाम्रो क्वेसनहरू भएन भने हाम्रो स्पिकर आई होप डाक्टर प्रतीक्षा इज ओपन फर द्याट. उहाँहरूले इमेल गर्नुभयो भने उहाँहरूले उहाँहरूको तपाईँहरूको क्वेसन्सहरू पनि एन्सर चाहिँ गर्नुहुन्छ. अनि हाम्रो क्वेसन एन्ड एन्सर राउन्ड सकिएपछि चाहिँ हामी ब्रेकआउट रुम क्रिएट गर्छौँ र त्यहाँ चाहिँ हामीले डाक्टर प्रतीक्षाले चाहिँ कपल अफ क्वेसन्स दिनुभएको छ, त्यसमा चाहिँ हामी चाहिँ एउटा ग्रुप डिस्कसन गर्छौँ र त्यसपछि चाहिँ हामी कन्क्लुड गर्छौँ यो वेबिनारलाई. वेबिनारको टाइमभरि म्युट बस्दिनु होला. अनि अर्को कुरा चाहिँ फिडब्याक फर्मको कुरा गरिसक्यौँ. अनि यदि कुनै कमेन्ट्स, यदि कुनै क्वेसन्सहरू छ भने चाहिँ तपाईँहरूले चाहिँ च्याट बक्स चाहिँ गरिराख्नुमा चाहिँ आफ्नो क्वेसन्सहरू राखिराख्नु होला. त्यो चाहिँ हामी चाहिँ मोनिटर गर्छौँ. सो द्याट्स अल अबाउट हाउसकिपिङ. सो आई होप आई कभर्ड एभ्रिथिङ अप हियर. So with that, I would like to introduce Dr. Pratikchya. whom I had the privilege to know since the last few weeks. Dr. Pratikchya is an associate professor in the Department of Psychiatry and Mental Health of the Institute of Medicine, Maharashtra. She has been working as a psychiatrist at the Trivandrum University Teaching Hospital since her graduation in 2008. So while working, she got motivated to do research. To date, she has been involved in a number of thesis research, some original research, and a few projects which are forthcoming. This engrossment in research led Dr. Twelfth to realize the shortfall of the culturally adapted and validated mental health tools in Nepal. Thus, interest in cultural adaptation and validation of mental health tools began. Apart from research, she is fascinated by psychological methods of treatment, especially mindfulness, dialectical behavior therapy, or DBT, and cognitive behavior therapy, CBT, which are usually incorporated into the management of her patients. Besides being academically driven, she is the happiest being with her husband, Dr. Vinod Serchan, and her two sons, Abilokit and Adhyayan. I hope I pronounced that right. So with that, Dr. Pratikchya, the floor is yours. Again, you webinars, I think this is a very timely webinar. TUIOM and TPO Nepal and George Washington University at the end of this month, say your topic much a short course called I think some of you are selected for that as well. So with that, Dr. Pratikchya, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Ani hazurle afno screen share garनुहुन्छ. Ani त्यसपछि you can get all started. Ani time bhayeपछि चाहिँ I'll give you like a nudge.
Okay. Thank you, Sauhad. That was really nice introduction. Okay, and let me share. Where is it? Yeah. Okay.
We can see your screen.
Okay.
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 Perfect.
So I'll do this.
Presenter view, dekhirasa, I think.
Is it okay now? Sauhad, what happened?
A presenter view dekhirasa हजुरको next slide हरु पनि सबै देखिरहेको छ. So agi first मा हजुरले जे गर्नु भएको थियो त्यो गर्नु भयो भने चाहिँ I think
that okay. So I need to do that one, isn't it? This one I need to do. This one.
Oh, this is perfect. Perfect. All right, so let's get started.
Okay. Namaste and good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Pratikchya and I'm a psychiatrist from Teaching Hospital. And first of all, I'd like to thank Mental Health Research Nepal team for providing me this platform to share our experiences and the learnings we had during our work. And so my topic today is translation, adaptation, and validation of Nepali mental health tools and the lessons learned from it. Okay, and but before that, before proceeding in that, I would like to put forward one question to all the participants, and that how many of you have been involved in such kind of studies, or how many of you have done such kind of studies? And I want participants to indicate through hand raise icons so that we can see. Okay. So is it 2 of you only? Is it 3 then? Okay, 4. Okay. It looks like many of you know already, many of you are already familiar with the validation, isn't it? Okay, so whoever already know about this validation, please take it as a revision for you And for others, okay, I hope it will be a good learning for you, so that it will be a help for you to carry out your validation studies. Okay, so basically this presentation is regarding our work that we did. Okay, and this is our team that we did. We culturally validated a Rosenberg self-esteem scale. And why we chose this Rosenberg self-esteem scale was that because we wanted to use Rosenberg self-esteem scale in one of our studies, but then we realized that this was not validated. So then we landed up doing a validation study. But what happened was it took a long time, but yes, we really had so many experiences and we learned a lot, and that's what we are sharing. Okay, so we'll proceed to the formal presentation. I have no any financial conflict to disclose. So this is purely an academic presentation. So now my first slide, which is, sorry. Sorry, my first slide, which, what's happening? Okay, this is my first, sorry, let it happen. The first slide, which shows that we need to, I think I put it on slideshow, is it?
तपाईले आफै अटोमेटिक गरिरहनु भएको जस्तो लाग्यो मलाई सो
I
आफै
haven't touched
चेन्ज
anything.
भइरहेको छ भने
I haven't touched anything.
एकचोटि माथि नै जानुस् त त्यो के रे कर्सरले पनि गर्न सक्नुहुन्छ नि तपाईले सबैभन्दा माथि जानुस् अनि त्यसपछि स्लाइड शो राइट ह्यान्ड साइड को राइट ह्यान्ड साइडको बटममा गर्नुभयो पनि हुन्छ
Yeah, from here.
Let's start from beginning if that works.
Okay.
यो भयो. Okay, next.
Okay, and then steps. Okay, I've done it. Okay,
there you go.
So this is, then it goes again. I mean, something's wrong with that.
Do you want me to share the slides, Dr. Pratikchya, if that's
okay.
helpful?
Yeah, let's do that. Okay.
So
I'll stop sharing this slide.
Right. हुन्छ हजुर शेयर स्टप गर्नुस् म हजुरको स्लाइडहरु शेयर गर्दिनुस् अनि चेन्ज गर्नुपर्छ भने चाहिँ मलाई भन्नुस् अनि त्यसपछि म गर्दिन्छु है त हुन्छ एकैछिन do you want to continue there you go. Okay, so I need to switch it. Displays. There you go. देखियो?
देखियो.
हुन्छ एकैछिन है त. Asla.
Okay.
Right? Okay. So I think there's something wrong with how we made this slide. So same.
Okay.
Same कुरा भइरहेछ नि.
Okay.
Okay. All right, you just carry on.
Okay.
What I'll do
my
is
first slide. We'll just do that. We'll just put it this way. I think that will be, everybody will see it, isn't it? So this first slide, I think this is the most important slide of my presentation, because this is what we really learned from our work, that we really have to have a theory and background, and then we need to do real careful planning, and then we have to have a groundwork in a sense that we really have to work ourselves with the patient, even the data collection, and even maybe in the cognitive interviewing part, maybe even in the expert discussion part. Maybe we have to sit together and do it, not that we be a principal investigator and then let others do other things, and that way we are not going to learn anything. So because because this theory and practical is going to be really different. So what we recommend is these three things you really have to have before you start any validation studies. So next slide, Samad. So the another important thing is careful planning. So within the careful planning, what you have to plan is what tool you are going to translate, and what sample population you are going to use, and which guideline you will choose. And within even the guidelines, there are so many steps that you need to follow, and all these things you need to be very ready for all these things. So next slide, Sawad. So we'll talk about each and every point that I've already mentioned, like regarding the tools. If you are going to translate any tool, then you have to think about whether you want to do a clinical tool or a research tool. Because if you want to do a clinical tool, then it has to have a very clinical utility, isn't it? Because these tools will be used by clinicians, and it has to be a short one, isn't it? Easy to administer. So all these things you have to think about it. And you also have to think about whether this is already validated in an original questionnaire or not, because it's no use if you use the non-validated questionnaire, because you have, if you use a non-validated questionnaire and then you have to validate in your own country, then it is going to be really a problem. So go for a validated, we have to go for a validated one. And then yes, you have to choose between, you want to make a brief you want a questionnaire of a brief one or a long one. And another last thing about the tool is whether it is freely available or not, because if it needs permission, then you have to go with that process. So that's the things you have to remember. Okay, so next slide. So another thing you have to be careful about is the sample population. Which sample population to choose? For example, whether you want to do it in a clinical population or whether you want to do in general population, non-clinical population. So whenever you do a first validation studies, it's always recommended that you start with the clinical sample first. Okay, so next slide, please. So when you search for the guidelines, you come across various guidelines for translation and adaptation and validation, and you will really be confused with that. So there are some that I have put it here, that is WHO guideline, which is up to the adaptation process only. There's ITC guideline, and there's according to so many authors. But whichever guideline you follow, what we recommend is you follow one and stick with one only. Okay, and the next slide. So, but whichever the guidelines you follow, but there will be, there will be a common steps in them. So the common steps will be always these steps that we are going to talk about. So the number one, first step will be a forward translation. Forward translation is like some recommends that for forward translation have just one translator, or some say like two, or even some have advice for more than two. But it depends on which guideline you use. Okay, but whenever you use forward translators, they might be like known to familiar with the original instrument, but for the back translation, it's always recommended that the back translator should be not familiar with the original instrument. But if you have two back translators, then one can be non-familiar, okay, and one can be a blinded one. And then whenever you do all these processes, the main thing you have to think about is documentation. Okay, you always document each and every process because it is needed for you to show as a documentation, and for the analysis later it is needed. And for the translation process, you can use the forms like which has been suggested by our Van Ommerman's translation form, which he has done in his study in 1999, and then that I'm going to show you later in the slide. The next slide, please. Okay, the another common step is expert panel discussion. For expert panel discussion, you have to choose between 2 to 10 experts, and recommended is like 6 experts you need. And experts will be like a very knowledgeable person in the content matter, or a knowledgeable person in a methodology. Okay, so you take the all the discussions from them, and then you compile it and you interpret it. And then you can interpret it in a qualitative form, or you can interpret it in a quantitative form, or both. Okay, they are all recommended, but always do document it. And how you document it will be then I'll talk in next slides. Okay, so then what experts panel do then? When they look, when they discuss what they look at. So that's what we are going to talk about in next slides. Next slide, please. So the main expert's role would be to check the content relevance. So content relevance is that they check that whether the items of one culture, okay, whether the items of one culture, the original questionnaire, does that items are relevant to the other culture or not? So they check all these things. For example, if there's a questionnaire about eating, and then if there's a question about like eating with knife and fork, but that is not like culturally relevant to Nepalese culture, isn't it? So they check all these things. So they also check this comprehensibility, which contains semantic equivalence, idiomatic equivalence. Okay. And they check the acceptability, technical equivalence, which is mainly a technical equivalence, and they look at the structure of the question responses, how's the responses made in the questionnaire. They check that, and then they look at the completeness, and they inside the completeness they look at the semantic, idiomatic, experiential, and conceptual equivalences. So next, Sauhad. So one example of the semantic equivalence is that the semantic equivalence means that the meaning of words and sentences in that is being used in the original questionnaire should have the same meaning in the translated version also. So they check that. In this case, for example, this is one example where in the original questionnaire, this question is there, which says that there is a special person who is around when I'm in need. But this item, the special word in this item, if you translate in Nepali, it will be the special word will be like in Nepali it will be khas manche. So in Nepali, with that khas manche, what it would mean? It would mean a husband, or it would mean a partner, because in this English version, the special person might mean a special friend or special relative. So these things should match, and these things should be checked by the experts panel. Okay, the next slide. So idiomatic equivalence means that in the certain original questionnaires, there might be some words or phrases which might be difficult to translate, but then you have to check, the experts panel have to check that how it has been incorporated. For example, the words like in this slide, the example I have given is, have you felt downhearted and blue? So the words like downhearted and blue is very difficult to translate in Nepali. So how this has been translated? It simply means that the person is really low, really depressed. So you have to check that how it is translated. Next slide, Sauhad. Okay, and then experiential equivalence is mostly regarding the activities, daily activities that's done in one culture might not be the same in another culture. So, so the expert panel checks about that. For example, the example given here is regarding the vacuum cleaner and playing a bowling and playing a golf, which things are not used by Nepali culture. So when you have to translate such kind of item in Nepali, then you have to change the activities that is done by the Nepalese people. So that's about experiential equivalence. Okay. So another slide, Sauhan. So the last one is the conceptual equivalence. So conceptual equivalence, what does it mean is the whole concept of the concept of the words and sentences or all the theme might be different in one culture and one culture to another culture. For example, these are one of the examples that I have chosen is like on the whole, I am satisfied with myself. These words like satisfied, I wish I could have more respect for myself. These words like respect, satisfied, in our culture is very hard to like express. Okay, and very hard to like understand thing. So in Nepalese culture, how are we going to translate these things in Nepalese? So all these things that expert panel have to look for it. So that's the role of expert panel. So so next slide, Sauhat. So how are you going to document the expert panels, all the discussions is like I'll show you in the next slides. Next slide, Sauhat. So one is that Van Ommermans and his friends, they have given the translation monitoring form, which can be used for both translation and even for the expert panels discussion. Okay, you can use this one. Or another one is next, Sauhat. So another one is this kind of rating scales, which has been given by, I can't see the name of the author, but there's the author's name is written there. But these kind of scales can be used so that it will be easier for you to present the document, and it will be easier for you to later do analyze. Okay. So next slide, so on. So another common step is cognitive interviewing. You must have heard about this cognitive interviewing, and for this the sample size we need is 8 to 12 is recommended, and they will be the same population where you will test your questionnaire. Okay, and then it will be done in the rounds and rounds until the confusions are all absent. Okay, and the technique you can do is read aloud technique, verbal probing, and focus group is just that you can do it in individual basis or you can do in a group. Okay, so that's why I put the focus group. But the main techniques are read aloud or verbal probing, and then document. You can even document this cognitive interviewing in Van Ommerman's translation form. And then there's another one I'll be showing. There's a Gordon Willis has given another form which you can use that to document it. And analysis is usually done. Analysis is usually done by the majority basis, which has been recommended. So the next slide, which I'll show. This is the Gordon Willis form that can be used for cognitive interviewing, and it says that there's the original question will be there, and then there will be the probing questions. Okay, and then all the results and suggested revision will be written there, and this will be a real document, and then for the analysis it can be used. So next slide, Sauhat. So I think this last step is testing of psychometric properties. So when you do psychometric properties, what you have to do is you have to really be acquainted with and understand all these terms like content validity, construct validity, all these validity terms, because you have to really come across these, and then you have to use all these things. So first of all you have to know what it really means. Okay, so you have to you have to be really understand these validity terms. Next. Okay, so for the psychometric property, what you do is you can take the samples. Recommended sample size is 1:10 according to the item. If the item is, for each item you take 10 sample population, or you take more than 300. So that is what recommended. The sample population is the same sample population where you really want to use this questionnaire. And then the testing of psychometric properties, there's within the testing of the psychometric properties, there is test of dimensionality, which means that every questionnaire is made up of group of items which measure the same construct, and then it explores and confirms that how many groups are there. So exploratory factor analysis, as it says, it explores how many such groups are there, and then confirmatory factor analysis, it confirms this scale has two dimensions, so it confirms it. So next slide. Okay, for the test of reliability, there are a lot of tests of reliability, but the most recommended one is Cronbach's alpha and retest reliability. And then what you have to keep in mind is that even for the reliability, the at least sample you need is 100. So you have to know all these things before you start doing the project. And then for test of validity, you can do when you have a gold standard tool. For example, if you, let's say that if you are doing BDI2, you want to translate a BDI2, validate a BDI2, you can do with already done DSS tool, okay? And then in convergent validity, which means that if theoretically, if the same construct is measured by the two measures, then it should have a relation. So convergent validity, if you have another validated tool theoretically related, then it should show the relation. That means if you want to do a depression scale, and if you do a quality of life scale, so it has to have a relationship between them. And you can do a divergent validity, or it is also named as discriminant validity. And for this, what you have to do is, if you want to do a BDI, like let's suppose that you want to do a depressive scale, you have a new depressive scale and you want to validate it, but then if you look at the divergent validity with a young mania scale, then it will not have a relationship. So that is divergent validity. So this was about the psychometric properties. I think next slide, Sauhad. Okay, so I think that's everything about translation, adaptation, and validation that we have learned in short. And then I'm happy to take all of your questions if time allows. And then I'm ending with two discussion questions, which we are going to discuss in a few minutes later. Isn't it, Sauhad?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Pratikchya. This was such a thorough presentation. Ekdam mazale, every steps with examples. Excuse me. So I think with this, we have some time for questions. So हामीसँग participantहरुको chat box मा चाहिँ question आइसकेको छैन, तर यदि हजुरहरुको डाक्टर प्रतीक्षाको वर्क अथवा ओभरअल होल प्रोसेसमा कुनै क्वेशन्स अथवा तपाईहरुको आफ्नो एक्सपिरियन्स ट्रान्सलेसन एडाप्टेसनमा छ भने प्लिज फिल फ्री. वी हैव अराउन्ड 10 minutes to have the question and answer round. So anyone can unmute, or you can raise your hand and then ask questions. Okay, I can start with Shraddhaji. Shraddha Malander, you can unmute and ask the question.
Hi everyone. So my question, first of all, Dr. Pratikchya, thank you for your presentation. So my question is, in your presentation, you mentioned that we also need to do cognitive interviews. You mentioned we need a sample of 8 to 12 and multiple rounds. So what exactly is this interview for? If we are doing, psychometric tests later, is it to validate translation? I'm not that clear. Thank you.
Okay, Shraddha, thank you for the question. This is also one of the process of validation, okay? But this is a simpler form and it is known as content validity, okay? For the content validation, you need to do a cognitive interviewing. Am I clear, Shraddha?
Okay, so yes, I think so. So cognitive interviews is one method, and psychometric properties is another method of validation.
Yes,
Is that
psychometric properties, for psychometric properties, you will really use all these statistical analysis, okay?
okay?
But for cognitive interviewing, you will do, yes, in quantitative analysis, you will use statistics, okay? But without quantitative analysis, also we can only do qualitative analysis, but that is still called content validity, okay?
Yes, I understand. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
As our next hand raise, Yuraji.
Namaste Sawardaji. Namaste Madam. I really loved your presentation because this is thorough and you have highlighted all the steps, and I was recalling back my PhD research also, because I went through these all processes while validating 3 different tools. It's still not published, but in the process. Basically, I had one question and one compliment, like as you have mentioned about cognitive interview and then the pilot testing. Yes, basically what I also understood is that the cognitive interview is, for an example, if we are working to collect the data from the adolescents population and in the general adolescents population, how they understand the questions. Basically, we try to collect individual or through focus group discussions their understanding of the questions, either the intended question is well understood by them or not. And after that, we collect some sample data for the pilot testing of psychometric properties. I didn't get one of the information. I think maybe I missed that. The sample size for pilot testing, I was referring generally 30 for the psychometric testing. Is this 100 minimum or 30? That I wanted to basically clear.
Okay, thank you, Yuvraj. Okay, so for like for pilot testing, I don't think 100 is enough. Okay, it is recommended that at least it has to be either you go by ratio of item and population, 1:10 at least. Okay, and it depends on then your questionnaire, or you have to take at least 300. That's
Okay. Okay, then what I have understood and what I did personally is that the pilot testing of the psychometric tools, basically the researchers, they suggest to pilot it in a small sample rather than going for the confirmatory or other level of validation with the larger population. So basically, I followed pilot testing of the tool with 30 participants. Then I checked the psychometric properties, either that allow to go further with the validation process with the larger audience. So if I understood correctly, then we can skip that process of pilot testing with a smaller sample. Okay, thank you very much for this clarification.
Thank you.
Yes. So I think we have time for a couple of more questions. So anyone, do you have any other questions for Dr. Pratikchya? You could either raise your hand, unmute, or just drop your question in the chat box. Dr. Sagun. Yes.
Yeah, ma'am, for an excellent presentation. Just to compliment, I think it was a very good overview. But sometimes when we are translating tools that are larger than life, let's say a structured diagnostic tool, for example, I have had experience of translating tools like Mini and then KSADS and then also SKID in the later half. The problem with these tools becomes that there are so many items that I think there are hundreds and 200s and 300s of items. So what would be the validation approach in such a tool? Should we choose certain items? So should we be very specific to certain items and look for conversion validities with specific tools? Or can we randomly choose items? Did you have any ideas when the tool is of a large number of items? Thank you.
Okay, Sagun, thank you for the question. But I don't think such kind of basically, I have to say that I don't have idea about that last one. Okay, but if you say that every scale or every research tool or any mental health tool has to, I think, go through all these processes. But that's what we will be discussing in the next discussion. Maybe I have written the discussions question also there, and we were going to discuss that also, because because we see a lot of papers where all the validities are not done. Validation is not done, isn't it? Like, yeah. For example, construct validity might be done, but conversion might not be done, or just criterion validity might be done, but all these divergent and all these may not be done, but still they will be validated, isn't it? So there is confusion regarding all these things, but as far as I know, it would be good that if the tool goes through all the steps, and then even if not also, I think the what it's recommended is that the criterion validity, which is the gold standard one, is the best one. If you have gold standard one, so that's the main best one, and then rest I also have to go and find out about that.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. It's thank you. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Pratikchya, Dr. Sagun. So I think we are out of, okay, so we have time for almost one question. So there's a question in the chat box, Dr. Pratikchya, from Kalpana ji. So thank you for the wonderful presentation, ma'am. I have a question on divergent validity, on discriminant validity. What does it mean when you say theoretical unrelated for divergent validity? Should we never use it, or is there any specific condition we will be using it? So yeah, that.
Okay, thank you, Kalpana ji, for your question. It's not that I don't think it means that we should not use it. And what I mean by theoretically unrelated means that, for example, that I gave, remember the example I gave, if you want to validate a depressive scale. So if you want to validate a depressive scale, if you compare it with the Young Mania scale, if the score of these two questionnaires is opposite to each other, okay, so if you find the items in the depressive scale comes very low, and then the mania scales comes very high, so that means this is totally opposite, and which should have been opposite. So it means that there is this is valid. that it has both of these doesn't have a relation, so it is valid. So it is one of the way to show you that this is the translated version, okay, is have this quality. It's have this divergent validity quality. It's just one way of showing it. I don't know if I was able to make you understand or not, or maybe other can like try to make it more clear. If anybody from the participants can clear out more.
I think I can try for that. If there are two kind of measures you are measuring, this test basically gives you an idea either these two measures are correlated or complement each other or not. That basically we should be testing. Like if you are testing anxiety and depression, both measures are directly related to each other, or they are indifferently related, because based on the theory, what it says that anxiety scale and depression scale should be different scales to measure different kind of notions. Like anxiety scales measures anxiety, depression scales measures depression. This is why this basically this test will allow you to understand either my scale is directly related with another scale or not, another measure or not. That is what basically we generally test through confirmatory factor analysis. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Yuvrajji. And then thanks, Dr. Pratikchya. So we're out of time for question and answer. I had a couple of questions, but I'm just going to save it for later. And then we're going to move to the discussion round. So we thought we would be able to do 10 minutes, but let's do it for 8 minutes considering the time. So what we will be doing next is we will be doing a breakout room. I think we will be having around 4 breakout room. And then we have 2 discussion points that Dr. Pratikchya has put up in here. So the first thing is there a need for validation of the research instrument before its implementation? And what are the challenges of cross-cultural validation of tools in lower income countries? So group ma gaera say your question is discuss garnu hola, and then there are a few facilitators who are going to come to the group and help on this. So Drishti, can you do the breakout room? And we're going to come back after 8 minutes. So सबैजनालाई notification आएको छ होला breakout room join गर्नुको लागि. So join गर्न सक्नुहुन्छ. अझै यहाँ हुनुभएकोहरूले पाउनुभयो है, त्यो एउटा पपअप आउनुपर्छ जोइन ब्रेकआउट रुम भनेर.
Sorry, you haven't joined as well, though.
Yeah, because there are some people who are still here, so I just wanted to make sure.
I can do that, so you can probably join your group.
Yeah, sure. So first thing, I'm going to broadcast. एकचोटि त्यो ब्रोडकास्ट गरिदेऊ न है डिस्कसन पोइन्ट्सहरु सबैजनालाई. त्यसै म गए.
I think validation of tool is very important. मैले पनि यो validated tool को बारेमा अझै धेरै चाहिँ मेरो मास्टर्सको थेसिस गर्ने बेलामा अलि जान्न पाएँ
हजुर
यो अहिले त्यस कारणले गर्दाखेरि अलिकति अलिअलि सजिलो पनि भयो कति कुराहरू टर्म्सहरू डक्टर प्रतीक्षाले भन्नुभएको टर्म्सहरू अनि क्वेसन्स विथ डिस्क्रिमिनेट भ्यालिडिटीहरू हामीलाई त्यति थाहा हुँदैन नि होइन अनि मैले भ्यालिडेटेड टुल्स युज गरेको भएर अलिकति त्यतिखेर गरेको भएर अलिकति रिकल भएर आयो कि अहिले चाहिँ अनि त्यो बल्ल मैले इम्पोर्टेन्स अझै चाहिँ त्यो बेलामा अझै जाने त्यसको तर आफै भ्यालिडेट गर्न भएको छैन मास्टर्सको थेसिस गर्ने बेलामा
म चाहिँ खासमा ब्याचलरको थेसिसमा चाहिँ यो मेन्स्ट्रुअल रेस्ट्रिक्सन गर्नु हुँदैन भन्ने चाहिँ डिस्कसन भइरहेको थियो गभर्मेन्टले नि ब्यान गरिरहेको थियो छाउगोठहरू होइन अनि मलाई चाहिँ मेन्टल हेल्थ एस्पेक्टमै किन चाहिँ गर्नु हुँदैन भनेर चाहिँ स्टडी नै नभएको त्यो ग्याप फाइन्ड गरेको थिएँ कि मैले अनि मैले चाहिँ पर्सिभ स्ट्रेस चाहिँ हेर्न ट्राई गर्छु भनेर ब्याचलरको थेसिसमा गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ त्यो अलरेडी भ्यालिडेटेड टुल रहेछ एउटा पर्सिभ स्ट्रेसको अनि त्यो हालेको थियो अनि त्यो गर्दाखेरि त अलरेडी भ्यालिडेटेड टुल भयो त्यो तर त्यहाँ कहाँनिर चाहिँ अझै फिट भएन कि अझै यसलाई चाहिँ मोर एप्लिकेबल टु सिनारियो बनाउन सकिन्छ कि जस्तो भएको थियो तर आफूलाई आइडिया भएन अब भर्खरै अन्डर ग्रेजुएट पनि भएर सो फर्दर चाहिँ मैले त्यसैलाई कन्टिन्यू गर्छु भने मास्टर्समा कसरी गर्न सकिएला भनेर चाहिँ म एक्सप्लोर गरिरहेको थिएँ कि अनि अर्को सर्ट कोर्समा पनि मैले त्यही भएर म त्यसैलाई कन्टिन्यू गर्न सकिन्छ कि भनेर गरेको थिएँ अनि यो चाहिँ जस्ट इन्साइटफुल कति कुरा त बुझिनँ पनि होइन तर नयाँ टर्म्सहरू पनि धेरै भयो तर बिस्तारै अब एक्सप्लोर गर्न जानलाई चाहिँ बाटो खुला जस्तो फिल भयो
मेरो एक्सपिरियन्स म सेयर गर्छु है सबैलाई हाम्रो जस्तो सेयरिङमा मेन्टल हेल्थको रिसर्चहरूमा युज हुने टुल चाहिँ कति ट्रान्सलेटेड हुन्छ बट दे आर नट भ्यालिडेटेड कि चाहिँ मैले नै युज गरेको टुल पनि त्यो WHO क्वालिटी अफ लाइफ को ब्रिफ भर्जन चाहिँ अब इट इज ट्रान्सलेटेड इन नेपाली होइन तर भ्यालिडेटेड छ जस्तो लाग्दैन अनि धेरैले युज गरिरहेको छ रिसर्चहरूमा ट्रान्सलेटेड मात्रै टुल्सहरूलाई पनि होइन अब हाम्रो जस्तो सेटिङमा लो रिसोर्स सेटिङमा अब सबै ट्रान्सलेटेड भ्यालिडेटेड टुल पाइन्छ भन्ने त भएन है अब
थियो कि मेरो त्यो केसमा चाहिँ भ्यालिडेटेड थियो टुल चाहिँ छन तर ट्रान्सलेटेड भर्जन पाउनलाई चाहिँ मैले अथरलाई कन्ट्याक्ट गर्दाखेरि पनि कन्ट्याक्ट कहीँबाट पाएन अनि मैले आफैले ट्रान्सलेट गर्नु परेको थियो अब त्यो ट्रान्सलेट गर्दाखेरि गर्नु त गरेँ तर त्यो एकदमै साइन्टिफिक वेमा भयो भएन भन्ने कुरा मलाई अस्योरै भएन कि
त्यो त यदि भ्यालिडेटेड छ भने अभियसली त्यो कल्चरली पनि ट्रान्सलेटेड अब हुनै पर्छ नि हैन ल्याङ्ग्वेज वाइज पनि हुनै पर्छ त्यो त भ्यालिडेसनको सबैभन्दा इम्पोर्टेन्ट कुरा हो नि त हैन
अनि त्यो टुलै आधिकारिक त्यो टुल ट्रान्सलेटेड पाइएन तर फेरि कैलालीमा गर्नुपर्ने ल्याङ्ग्वेज पनि बेरियर थियो अनि मैले त्यहीँ गएर त्यही पाइलटिङ गरेर गर्न चाहिँ तर अब त्यही त त्यो ओभरअल स्याम्पल
अब नेप्लिज पपुलेसन कन्टेक्स्ट अथवा कुनै भनौँ सब पपुलेसनमा भ्यालिडेसन को कुराहरू आउँछ होला नि त्यो त ओभरअल भन्दा पनि अब हामीले अब युज गर्ने स्ट्यान्डर्ड टुल्स दे आर भ्यालिडेटेड भनौँ न कुनै पपुलेसनमा गर्दा आउटसाइड गर्दाखेरि इङ्ग्लिस ल्याङ्ग्वेजमा अथवा अरू ल्याङ्ग्वेजमा दे आर पक्का पनि भ्यालिडेटेड हुन्छ तर नेपाली कन्टेक्स्टमा युज चाहिँ गर्दाखेरि सबै ट्रान्सलेटेड एन्ड भ्यालिडेटेड टुल चाहिँ पाइँदो रहेछ भन्ने लागेको थियो मलाई चाहिँ आफ्नो भनौँ न यो एमडीको थेसिस गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ विभिन्न फ्याक्टरहरू हुन सक्छन् मभन्दा एक्सपिरियन्स रिसर्चरहरू हुनुहुन्छ यहाँ तपाईँहरूले नि त्यो नोट गर्दाखेरि हुन्छ अब पहिलो कुरा त अब मलाई लाग्छ इकोनोमिक इस्युजको कुरालाई युवराजजीले हात उठाउँदै हुनुहुन्छ प्लिज
कन्टेन्टमा जानु पर्दाखेरि क्वेसन चाहिँ हामीले किन भ्यालिडेटेड टुल युज गर्नुपर्छ र त्यो चाहिँ युज गर्नुभन्दा अगाडि किन भ्यालिडेट गर्नुपर्छ भन्ने पहिलो प्रश्न थियो त्यो अर्को ग्रुपले हेर्छ कि के गर्छ थाहा छैन है सौहार्द सरले क्लियर गरिदिनु होला द सेकेन्ड क्वेसन चाहिँ हाम्रो च्यालेन्जेसहरू के छ त भ्यालिडेसनमा भन्ने कुरामा चाहिँ
त्यो सेतो छ नि डाबरको भाडा हो त्यसमा छ
हाम्रो रिसोर्स होला हैन एउटा फाइनान्शियल रिसोर्सेस अलिक कमी भएको कारणले गर्दाखेरि त्यो एउटा च्यालेन्ज होला हाम्रोमा
त्यसमा अब म हजुरले भन्नुभयो पहिलो कुरा फाइनान्शियल रिसोर्सेस फाइनान्शियल रिसोर्सेस भन्दा पनि पहिला के हुन्छ भने तपाईले कुनै चिज गर्नलाई विलिङनेस गर्नुभयो भने तपाईको विशेष गरी गाइडेन्स छैन हैन आफूले एक्सपिरियन्स्ड रिसर्चरहरुको गाइडेन्स पाउन गाह्रो छ फर्स्ट कुरा दोस्रो कुरा रिसोर्सेस भयो तेस्रो कुरा चाहिँ स्ट्याटिस्टिकल एनालाइसिसको कम्प्लेक्सिटीहरु हुन्छ मोस्ट अफ द मेडिकल रिसर्चर अथवा साइकोलोजिस्टहरुले जस्तो मैले आफैले पीएचडी गर्दा मैले सबै स्ट्याटिस्टिक्स आफैले सिक्नु पर्यो मलाई समय लाग्यो त्यसले गर्दाखेरि एज अ ग्रुप वर्क गर्नको निमित्त स्यालरीड स्टाफ हुँदैन सबैको आफ्नो आफ्नो प्राथमिकताहरु छ त्यो एउटा च्यालेन्ज भित्र पर्छ अर्को चाहिँ हाम्रो रिसोर्सेसको एभाइबिलिटी जर्नल आर्टिकलहरु अथवा टुल्सहरु भ्यालिडेटेड टुल्सहरु अघि दिपेश सरले भने जस्तो चाहिँ कुन चाहिँ भ्यालिडेटेड भएको छ कुन चाहिँ भएको छैन भन्ने कुराहरुको हाम्रो एउटा वेबसाइट अब जस्तो विदेशमा चाहिँ तपाईको त्यहाँनेरि रिसोर्सेस हरुलाई चाहिँ एउटै वेबसाइटमा सेन्ट्रलाइज गरेर राख्दिएको
हुन्छ कतिवटा ग्रुपहरु म ग्रुप 2 मा थिए एकदम इन्ट्रेस्टिङ डिस्कसन भइरहेको थियो तर समयको कारणले गर्दाखेरि आई ह्याड टु क्लोज द ब्रेकआउट रुम हामीसँग अलमोस्ट 3 मिनट्स टाइम्स हामी हुन त अलिकति ढिलो सुरु गर्यौं बट ग्रुपहरुले के कुरामा डिस्कस गर्यो सो इफ दे कुड ब्रिफली शेयर लाइक इन अ फ्यु लाइन्स दैट वुड बी super helpful सो कुनै ग्रुपको रिप्रेजेन्टेटिभ शेयर गर्न सक्नुहुन्छ
Maybe I can start. हाम्रो ग्रुपमा हामी 3 जना मात्रै थियौं एक्टिभ पार्टिसिपेसनमा बट फर्स्ट क्वेशनमा चाहिँ हाम्रो सबैको अग्रीमेन्ट के थियो भने इट्स रियली इम्पोर्टेन्ट र जेनरली हामी 3 जना कुनै न कुनै हिसाबमा स्टुडेन्ट रोलमा थियो एकजना युकेमा पीएचडी गरिराख्नु भएको थियो एकजना टोकियोमा मास्टर्स गरिराख्नु भएको थियो सो भ्यालिडेसनको इम्पोर्टेन्स छ इम्प्लिमेन्टेसनको अगाडि बिकज वी वान्ट टु मेजर व्हाट वी वान्ट टु मेजर भन्ने किसिमको डिस्कसन भयो र सेकेन्ड क्वेशनमा चाहिँ आई थिंक च्यालेन्जेसमा चाहिँ एउटा चाहिँ जेनरलाइजेबिलिटी जस्तो हाम्रो जस्तो सेटिङमा दे क्यान बी पिपल विथ डिफरेन्ट कल्चर सोसियो इकोनोमिक स्टेटस पर्सेप्सन अबाउट मेन्टल हेल्थ सो त्यसले गर्दाखेरि त्योलाई भ्यालिडेट गर्दाखेरि देयर आर सो मेनी कन्फाउन्डर्स भन्ने विषयमा कुरा भयो र अर्को एकदम इन्ट्रेस्टिङ कुरा चाहिँ कस्ट पनि इम्पोर्टेन्ट हुँदो रहेछ सम टुल्समा चाहिँ अथर्सहरूले ट्रान्सलेसन र भ्यालिडेसनमै पनि चार्ज राख्दाखेरि चाहिँ सम इम्पोर्टेन्ट टुल्स जस्तो हाम्रो साथीले शेयर गर्दा चाहिँ शी वाज वान्टिङ टु ट्रान्सलेट वान टुल विच वाज अ सर्टर भर्जन अफ ओरिजिनली प्लान टुल्स तर त्यो यस्तो एक्सपेन्सिभ हुन गयो कि उहाँलाई त्यो रेलेभेन्ट लाग्यो पनि शी कुड नट डु द्याट भन्ने कुरा शेयर भयो So I think it was a very exciting discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Sagun. Next group.
Okay, sir. हामी चाहिँ ग्रुप 3 मा थियौ 3 जनाको चाहिँ डिस्कसन भएको थियो त्यसमा चाहिँ फर्स्ट क्वेशनमा चाहिँ सबैको अग्रीमेन्ट नै थियो जस्तो टुल्सहरु चाहिँ बाहिरबाट हुन्छ हाम्रोमा चाहिँ भ्यालिडेसन भयो भने चाहिँ अनि बल्ल हाम्रो कन्टेस्टमा इन्स्ट्रुमेन्टहरु युज गर्न सकिन्छ भन्ने नै थियो अनि नेक्स्ट क्वेशनको च्यालेन्जेसमा चाहिँ जस्तो हाम्रो टुल्सहरु चाहिँ नेपालमा कल्चरली एडाप्टेड टुल्स अनि अल्टरनेटिभ भ्यालिडेसन प्रोसेसहरु भनेको चाहिँ कम नै हुन्छ अथवा ल्याक नै छ अनि बाहिरबाट डेभलप कन्ट्रीजबाट आएको टुलहरु युज गर्दा चाहिँ त्यसको रेटिङ स्केलहरु कसरी स्केल गर्ने उहाँको कन्टेस्ट र नेपाली कन्टेस्ट त डिफरेन्ट हुन्छ जस्तो कल्चरली सोशली पनि अनि उताको वे अफ पर्सेप्सन कस्तो छ कसरी लिनुहुन्छ जस्तो मेन्टल हेल्थको डिप्रेसन त्यस्तो कुराहरु र नेपालमा कस्तो छ भन्ने कुरा चाहिँ स्टिग्माटाइज भएर र स्टेरियोटाइपहरुले चाहिँ डिफरेन्ट हुन्छ त्यही भएर चाहिँ कसरी स्कोर गर्ने क्वेशनहरुलाई कसरी रेटिङ गर्ने अनि त्यो भनेर चाहिँ त्यो दुईटैमा अप्लाई नहुन पनि सक्छ कुनै कुनै सिचुएसनमा भन्ने चाहिँ एउटा मेजर च्यालेन्जेस हाम्रो डिस्कस भएको थियो अनि जस्तो मोड अफ थिंकिङ र एक्टिङ चाहिँ कुनै कल्चरल एस्पेक्टमा डिफरेन्ट हुन्छ भने त्यो टुल्सले चाहिँ अब जस्तो उहाँहरुले चाहिँ कसरी रेटिङ गर्नुहुन्छ डिप्रेसनलाई भनेर उहाँको पर्सेप्सनलाई एकदम मेजर छ भने यताकोमा चाहिँ अलि डिफरेन्ट हुन्छ त्यही भएर चाहिँ त्यस्तो च्यालेन्जेसहरु चाहिँ धेरै नै आउँछ भन्ने छ यति नै हो सेम नै हुन्छ
थ्याङ्क यू विनिताजी हुन्छ हामी टाइममै क्लोज गर्ने हाम्रो एम हो सो विल क्लोज इन टाइम द्याट मिन्स नेक्स्ट ग्रुपहरूलाई चाहिँ म सेयर गर्नुको लागि चाहिँ सरी म टाइम अलिकति भएन तर एन्डमा चाहिँ वाट आई रियली वान्टेड टु डु वाज थ्याङ्क डक्टर प्रतीक्षा थ्याङ्क यू भेरी भेरी मच फर यर एक्सिलेन्ट प्रेजेन्टेसन हामी सबैजनाले वी आर लाइक रिसर्चर्स वर्किङ इन मेन्टल हेल्थ इन नेपाल सो तपाईँको प्रेजेन्टेसनले चाहिँ आई थिङ्क इट्स very helpful for all of us discussionहरु एकदम राम्रो भयो I'm sorry I had to cut it short but once again thank you Dr. Pratikchya अनि अन्त्यमा चाहिँ हाम्रो दृष्टिजीले चाहिँ फिडब्याक फर्म राख्नु भएको छ च्याट बक्समा नभुलिकन प्लिज त्यहाँ क्लिक गरेर चाहिँ हजुरहरुको फिडब्याक यो सेसनको लागि र साथसाथै आउँदो सेसनको लागि चाहिँ तपाईहरुको फिडब्याक सजेसन चाहिँ इट्स भेरी इम्पोर्टेन्ट त्यही कारण चाहिँ प्लिज त्यो चाहिँ फिडब्याक फर्म चाहिँ गरिदिनु होला सो we'll see you next month with another exciting speaker any topic so आजको लागि चाहिँ यति नै गरौँ so thank you once again Dr. Pratikchya and for everyone for sticking in this hour so सबैजनाको अब खाना खाने टाइम पनि भयो होला so I'll just wrap it up here so thanks everyone and good night.
Thank you so much.
Yes.